welcome to another episode of The Grapevine. This is part 3 of the topic abortion and the pro-life movement and ministry. We're here with Charles DeMarco at New Life Solutions, and hopefully you took a look at some of the other episodes we did previously last week and the week before, parts 1 and 2. And welcome back, Charles DeMarco. Thank you again for staying with us for this 3rd episode.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you, Susie and Irene and Raham. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. You're such a good help to us. For the last couple episodes, we touched based on the statistics of abortion, and we spoke before about some of it. Can you please tell us, or tell our viewers, how many abortions have been performed since Roe v. Wade,
Yes.
which was 1973? Tell us how many abortions are performed each year.
Yes. Since the passing of Roe versus Wade in 1973, in the United States alone, there have been over 62 million abortions. And that number is the number that is recorded. That doesn't even take into account a couple of the states that don't record their data, and also doesn't take into account now what we're seeing over these last couple of years, the trends with the RU486 and some of the pills that can be provided. But what is recorded right now, 62 million abortions in the United States since 1973. If I can drill that down a little bit more to Florida, the state of Florida, 70,000 abortions on average. In Pinellas County, about 10,000 abortions. In this general area, the Tampa Bay area of Pinellas County.
Year?
A year.
Per year.
That is correct. That is on average about 1 every 30 seconds. So in the 30 minutes that we'll spend together on average in the United States, there will be about 60 abortions. Sometimes when I talk about these statistics, these numbers seem so large, it's a little bit challenging to grasp. And so I'm going to demonstrate something. It'll take about a minute, but it'll add a little bit of texture for you and your viewers about what the state of abortion is. And I'm going to do this demonstration. And so, Raham, if I can just have you hold this bucket.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do, and your viewers will be able to pick up this noise. Unfortunately, I'm going to drop a BB. I have a BB in my hand. And when you hear this noise, that represents 10,000 lives that have been lost. And I'm going to walk through a series of events, and each BB represents 10,000 lives that were lost. So this is the Civil War. And these are lives that were lost in action, in combat. That was the Civil War. This is World War I. This is World War II, not counting the Holocaust on the Jewish people, but those that died in action during World War II. And then finally, Vietnam. Now I have one other bucket. And this bucket is the War on the Unborn since 1973.
Oh my God. Wow. Oh my God.
That
Each
I
BB,
wish the camera can look inside the bucket, because you look at inside, look, I mean, this is crazy. There are about, what, 25 here? And countless. Wow.
Each BB represents 10,000 lives.
This is nothing.
Too many.
This
Lost
is
lives.
nothing compared to this. Oh my God.
And one of the things to
That's
note,
sickening.
it is. I know the first time, you know, you're just praying for the noise to stop, and it never stops. And unlike the wars, the initial group that we just did, those wars have ended. I could still be pouring BBs out right now.
Yeah, but by the time we finish this episode, there will be more.
That's correct. And so
wow.
sometimes it adds a little granularity.
It definitely
it.
does.
It's very saddening though, to just realize it and put a vision, like put a visual to it. It helps a lot.
Yes.
It really does.
Wow.
That actually brings me to a point, is that I'm from New York, and it's a very liberal, New York City, and it's a very liberal city. So I was always conservative for myself, but I didn't, and I was pro-choice for others or liberal for others. I didn't want to push my views on them. I felt like, everybody's pretty, I would say, anti-Christian. And so I never wanted to force my views on them. And I was very pro-choice, and I thought, I fell into those words you were talking about, reproductive rights or women's body, women's choice. And so it wasn't until a few years ago I did some research, and I watched how abortions were performed. There's videos on how abortions are performed through all the trimesters. And I realized that these abortions are taking away the rights of those who cannot speak for themselves. Obviously, we saw that with that demonstration. There's no one that's yelling they cannot yell for themselves or say that they want to survive. And I've completely changed my mind, where now not only am I pro-life for myself, but I want pro-life for everyone. I want everyone to have the same thing you were saying from our first episode, is that, your vision is that that abortion just doesn't exist, or that we don't have any abortions. So I was wondering, why is this deception, and I was deceived, first to admit it, so strong? Why has the enemy been able to take over those words, choice? Why is it called pro-choice and not pro-death, pro-abortion? Why is it called reproductive rights when it's unproductive? Why is it called woman's body, woman's choice, when it's a completely different body? It's not, it's dependent on a woman, yes, to carry it, but it's a completely different body that feels differently than the woman. And why does it take so much work to change someone's mind, where it's counseling, or they're doing research, deep dialogue with someone, reading scripture and understanding it? And watching videos, like how abortions are performed. Why is it so hard? Why is this fight so hard? And getting people to see the big picture, and that demonstration, hearing that, is just unbelievable. Why is it such a hard fight? Why is it, why does it seem like the devil or the enemy is winning?
That's right. Satan is the father of lies. He's the king deceptor, and he will use words, and it will become so generic and have such an affirmation from the world's perspective that we become numb to the meaning and what they're saying. And I like in Scripture, where we need to be as wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove. I know Jesus' counsel is, you need to know the wiliness and the activities of the enemy, so you can interpret that and to counter that.
Yeah.
And when you see these words like choice, when you see these words like reproductive rights, they're trying to remove what it really is. It's trying to remove some of these discussions that I've even had with others about choice. And if you're truly pro-choice, when a woman decides to carry her child and choose life, then come alongside us and help us with that process and the discipleship and the life skills. And usually the answer is no, because that pro-choice, most of the time, leads down that one road towards an abortion. The choice, the one and only choice, is a choice of abortion. We're trying to take that word back. Some of our advertising, in fact, and social media with our Women's Place Medical Clinic is using the word choice, because there is a choice. There is a healthy choice. And it's almost like, the frog in the pot of water. If you say words enough over time, it just becomes very commonplace. And so for generations now, we have children and families being brought up with this idea that pro-choice, but really it is leading to abortion. So we're trying to change some of these words for what they really are. And you'd mentioned Scripture. I love what it says. We see this multiple times in Psalms, in Proverbs, about to be a voice for the voiceless and a defender of the defenseless. Even in Proverbs 24, 11 and 12, talks about rescuing those who can't rescue themselves. And then the verse goes on to say, don't say you weren't aware of this situation.
Right.
We're all aware of it. In Proverbs 31, which is many, many times referred to as you look at the Proverbs 31 woman, which I love that chapter, The first 8 verses, though, were beautiful, too. And it's a mom talking to her son, the king, providing some counsel. And she's saying, son, speak up for those that can't speak for themselves. Provide justice for those who can't provide justice for themselves. You know, I think right now, and they're even happening this year, if you were to look back, I did this. I looked back at the top 10 movies in our pop culture over the last like 10 years. And many of these movies are like these superhero type movies. You know, we're all probably familiar with the cast of characters, whether it's Avengers and all these movies. And I wonder why these movies seem to gravitate so high. And here's what I think. This is just me. I know people are not consciously making these choices as they're thinking about attending these movies. But I think we, as a society, like to see someone standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. I think we like to see people insert themselves between others who can't protect themselves. I think we like to see good winning over evil.
Yeah, every time.
I think we like to see those be a voice for the voiceless, to be a defender for the defenseless. I think we like to see things where people who are once broken are made whole.
Yes.
And I think that's exactly what Jesus did for us. He inserted himself between us and certain destruction.
Right.
And that's what we need to do for the unborn. Who will speak up for them if we don't speak up for them?
Right. We're complicit if we don't. We're just complicit in what these abortion clinics are doing. And I mean, I know we mentioned there's plenty of abortion clinics, and then there's Planned Parenthood, which gets tax money, and we're basically paying for that. That's our money that's going to that. And so without us speaking up, and then we're complicit in it. And
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're doing these episodes for exactly that same purpose that you just talked about, and what you said was so powerful. I feel like there is nothing else to be said here.
Right?
But I wanted to bring it a little bit back to home again, going back to talk about our community, the Coptic community and culture. Abortions, for the most part, it's not talked about that much. And I mentioned earlier, maybe in the previous episode, that from my experience, the people I have met in my life that considered it seriously were people who are married and established and so on. But there's also another group, maybe the young, unmarried female that kind of like fell in sin and became pregnant, and it's very frowned about in our community. It's a taboo. These people, if they will ever consider abortion, it will be completely secretive. Say something to these women or little girls. They're actually girls.
Yes.
Can they reach out to your ministry for help? And
Absolutely.
how do you help someone if they want to keep this completely private?
Right. And we do, we have people calling us. We have people, reaching out to us, on our website, again, from all different backgrounds. And from within our ministry, we look at even, I think about even like in Genesis 1:29, that we were created in his image. And so the life they're carrying was created in his image. Ephesians talks about his masterpiece. And we're all such uniquely different. And we are all his masterpiece. That unborn child is his masterpiece. And so what we want to do is come alongside to see how we can help someone through a process, especially from a background where maybe it would not be as generally accepted. From our perspective, the truth would be that you now have a human life that you are responsible for and are carrying. And what a blessing that is. Again, what a gift. And so we try to kind of walk through those steps. We try to involve those support, whoever would be in that support group. And I certainly know some backgrounds, it's not embraced well. And we see a lot in our centers, our Women's Place centers, from different backgrounds where the family does not support or embrace that decision.
right.
But what we see when they choose life, they're taking that higher road, if you will, and choosing life, even knowing that this may not be accepted well. And so we try to help process through that with them. We see even in our schools, by not educating and informing, what's going to happen is we're going to see higher degree. And then what we see, and I'm convinced, some of the situations that we as a society are dealing with right now have to do, when you look at, like we just talked about, over 62 million abortions in the last 40 plus years. A lot of it has to do with that. And I think when the impact that that could have far outreaches, generationally speaking, what their decision could be. So we try to come alongside in a way to encourage choosing life, to educate and inform and to help them get through whatever might be the challenges.
Let me add one more thing, and I don't know if you ever heard of this from anybody or you aware of it. In our, and I'm not saying in our Coptic Orthodox faith, because that's not biblical at all. We don't believe in it. But in the Egyptian culture, Middle East culture, Muslim culture for the most part too, a child out of wedlock is the child himself. Even if the mother did not choose abortion and the child was born and lived, is looked upon as cursed. You are born out of wedlock. You will forever be.
It's very old style thinking.
Right. So you're not equal to everyone else here.
They're treated differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a very if I am that, I would probably hide it for the rest of my life, and I will have to deal with the knowing that I was born out of wedlock, which will always be looked upon. I'm cursed. Something is wrong with me. So I don't want to do this about.
There's a big stigma, and it's very caste-like. And I wouldn't say we're like India, where there's like a caste system, but there is within the Middle Eastern community. There's a stigma where if you're born out of wedlock, you're considered just not even like a human being almost, or less than.
Sure.
Which is very sad because the child is innocent, doesn't deserve that. So that's why I think there's such a high rate of abortion, even though it's outlawed in Egypt. There is a high rate. I read a statistic that they did a check in the city where there's 1,200 people and 400 of the women have had abortions. I don't know if that they were married or not, but the fact that there's such a high number of abortions, like what is that, 40%, I think around 40%. It's very high, and I would think if any of these women are single, they're choosing it without ever thinking about the dignity of human life, just because maybe they're concerned not just about their reputation, but that child would be treated so badly.
In that community or society, they are going to be forever cursed and not treated
No one would want to marry them or marry into that family. It's just like generational.
Hire them. I remember the stories. When I was in medical school in Egypt, we would go to these clinics, and like if a woman had a baby out of wedlock, and let's say like a 17-year-old girl, and she died through the process, so that child will be put in the orphanage. So it's a very strange thing, but whoever delivers the baby, the doctor or whoever, will give the baby the name, will name them, not even the family, because usually there is no family.
Right.
So they pick certain names for these children because they are born out of wedlock. They call them things you would never call a child. You know what I mean? Names it to indicate
It's
that
like the story of Hosea.
You know what I mean?
The names that he gave his children.
Yeah. Different, strange, I can't remember right now, but names that you would never name a normal child.
So they label them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Literally label them.
They label them for the rest of their
Like,
lives.
It's a very sad
Hazin,
culture.
which means sad. Like they call them sad.
They would call them that?
Yes.
name?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
That
name.
that is that's obviously some of these external factors very difficult. The model for me, I think of the model again. I look at scripture. I think of the model. Who did Jesus associate with? Who did he come alongside with? He came alongside with those that would have been deemed at the time outcasts.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were even talking about that one example, whether it was prostitutes or tax collectors or people who were looked down upon, former prosecutors of Christians, if you will, and he hung out with them and offered them grace and said, I know your background, just go and sin no more. And I think of examples where he did things and about making the right choices and how he blesses, even in the midst of difficulty. I think of the one account, and I really like this account for another reason than maybe the obvious, but the account in Scripture that talks about the 10 lepers, where Jesus had 10 lepers and one came back to say thank you, right? Okay, and we talk about that. And I love that. There's so much in there. But here's what I love. In that Scripture, Jesus talks about, here's what you need to do for healing, for restoration. As soon as they began their journey, they were healed. They didn't have to arrive. And to me, I think about when we are faithful and diligent and obedient in the midst of a difficult circumstance, that was going to be a very difficult journey for them, they were blessed. And when we follow that model, even though it goes against the headwind of societal type forces, culture, but when we know we're doing the right thing, I think he will open up the opportunity to be blessed.
That's very powerful.
It is. It is. Well, I guess those are we definitely have to pray for everyone, especially the women or children that are going through it in Egypt and in America and everywhere. I mean, I think prayers for them more than anything. I know it's a difficult life. I didn't know that they named them labels like that. But
I'm serious. I'm telling
That's
you
very
a
sad.
story that I witnessed
You know.
firsthand. Yeah.
I think we needed more education. We educated.
we still, I think they're stuck, and so they need that education.
It's the culture.
yeah.
I think it's the culture. Like I know, our culture too, and that's sad, because once even the whole family is looked upon like down if
Oh,
someone
yeah. Oh, yeah.
had a child out of marriage.
Yeah.
Out.
And
So-
you know, even to take it further, and I know this might be surprising to you, but you are also looked down upon if you give up a child for adoption. If you are pro-life and you feel like I do not want to kill my child, but I cannot take care of them, so I'm going to give them up for adoption. You are looked at like you are the horrible person that is going to let someone else raise your flesh and
child.
blood.
Either decision
To-
they make, they're
Exactly,
it's
it's
not
like
good.
you're damn if you do.
Right.
It's like this is another piece in our culture that even that option can be so difficult for us, for any woman from our community to choose.
I think that's something that we could be praying about.
Yes.
With-
It needs a lot of prayers.
It-
I
we
feel
do.
like there might not be an answer that we can see right now, but it just needs a lot of prayer.
Like
Because it's a lot of backwards
You
thinking
even
to
bring
me.
this up when, like the two examples that I talked about, when I brought this up to them, like you don't have to take care of the child, you don't have to kill the child either.
Right.
There is something called you can give them up for adoption.
It's a choice.
It's a choice, and it's available, and it can be done in the very different ways. You can choose to have contact with that child in the future. You can choose not to. I mean, you have choices. And they looked at me like I am crazy. Coming.
You must be
was
from
like,
America because we don't do
whoa.
that here.
I was
Right.
called, you're too Americanized. How can you say this?
Well,
Like,
you know,
isn't it better than killing
yes.
the baby?
I think so.
Sadly, I think this is something that happens potentially globally, and we do see some of this even within our centers
Wow.
of those women that we counsel with in adoption. And again, we walk through all their options. We do have to talk about abortion. We talk about adoption. We talk about parenting process as well. But those, not many will choose adoption. And it's not because they're choosing life anyway to parent. They'll move forward with an abortion. And for exactly what you just mentioned, Rahim, in that they'll say things, you would think what they would state would be the reasons why they would not have an abortion and adopt, but they'll say things like, I don't know who will take care of my child. I don't know if I will ever see my child again.
Why
I
do you
don't know.
care? You're gonna kill them anyway.
It's,
That is
Right.
it's some logic that we need to keep layering in the communication and really be praying about that there's this whole paradigm shift of how a life is thought about and that sanctity of life.
I see that. I definitely see that. I think it is like shifting the way they think. And from any culture, just once you can kind of have them accept and agree that this is a life and it should have a chance, then I guess all the other things that are bad that come with it, you know, kind of takes a back seat, and then they realize I've got to at least give birth to this child and it has a chance. It's just, I think we have to reshift our thinking. It's like you were saying before, the enemy has grabbed onto these words, and it's made Americans think a certain way that, oh, okay, well, I can just abort up to the day that I'm going to give birth. And so we need to kind of bring back the focus, like, no, that is the wrong way of thinking. It's so illogical. And so once we can educate there, I think it doesn't.
Think about that too. Like, if you have a baby, you give birth to a baby, and the baby is 1 day old, 2 days old, whatever, and you do something that we consider a form of abuse for that baby. What's gonna happen to you as a mother? You are gonna get in all kinds of trouble.
Yes.
But a day, 24 hours earlier,
Before,
if you chose to kill that baby,
You're fine.
nobody would move a finger.
That's
And
correct. You would be applauded for that.
Yes.
That
You'd be like a
I
woman's
don't know.
champion, which
Right.
makes no
doesn't
sense.
make
It does.
it
It's
does not
very
make
illogical.
any sense to me.
When you don't stand on truth and righteousness, you have this illogical thinking, as you just mentioned, a perfect example. It's probably the same reason why we were previously talking about some bills. The one bill that would have said, hey, a child that survives a botched abortion must be protected, is probably why some did not vote to support that, because they were probably thinking, if I acknowledge this, someone's going to say, how could you acknowledge this? But 30 seconds earlier, you're fine. And so they're like, oh, I have to ride this train out now because I haven't.
They are doing
I
that.
need to haul off that train.
A 1 day old baby has rights, and you cannot do certain things.
1 hour, baby.
Or it will be considered abuse, and you will get in trouble, and you could be charged with a criminal charge.
Infanticide.
You have many states that have laws that if someone were to, let's say hypothetically, run a red light and hit someone that was pregnant and both would pass away, there would be 2
Charges.
Yes.
charged. And
Yes.
of course, New York removed that in conjunction
They
with
don't
what
like.
they
I
just did.
bet they don't like that.
And so,
Yeah.
so on one hand, you see a lot of inconsistencies. But
Yes.
again, when you don't
That's the
stand
devil.
on...
You know, this is the
Yes.
devil.
Yes.
This is the devil's
It
work,
is.
and
It
that's
is.
a very common style of how he works. Deception.
That's right.
Huge.
Calling things a different name to make it something else when
Yeah.
it's not.
I was deceived.
That's
I
why
was deceived
the
myself, definitely.
wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove, we need to be aware of those things. And then, because people say, Charles, well, what can I do? And I'm always like, well, in addition to be praying for us, it's time to stand up and speak out. Whether that means it's helping us in what we do with our annual Walk for Life, which comes up this May 11th here in the Pinellas, Tampa Bay area, or in different states or globally, talk to lawmakers, write letters, get involved, as opposed to passive listening. And I know we might feel that we don't agree with things, but we should have a call to action.
Right.
We should want to get involved in some manner, whatever that looks like for each individual, to help be that voice for the voiceless and that defender for the defenseless.
So Charles, you're located in Largo, Florida. Can you help us and help our viewers, teens, single moms,
Yes.
families, to find similar places here in the U.S. and nationwide that can get the same help and support towards abortion?
Yes, wonderful question, Irene, thank you. There are wonderful ministries and organizations throughout the nation that provide similar services. I'm going to reference 2 websites that just do an outstanding job. One is called heartbeatinternational.org. heartbeatinternational.org. And on this website, you will find pregnancy centers throughout the U.S. when you put in your zip code. They have what they call an option line, whether it's phone call or private chat, where you can ask questions and dialogue, and you may be concerned or may find yourself in the middle of an unplanned pregnancy. But these are resources that are available nationwide, and they will connect you with something very close to you. They have articles, a lot of content on there. There's also another organization very similar in scope, and they're wonderful partner groups, and it is called CareNet. Their website would be care, C-A-R-E, and then a dash, net.org, care-net.org. And similarly, you can put in your zip code and find pregnancy centers, and to where you can find organizations just like ours in any state in the U.S. And that would be a great place to start as well for those that are outside of this general area.
That is
Anything
awesome.
outside of the U.S. that you're aware of?
Worldwide.
There are organizations that do, we actually helped start the one and only pregnancy center in Puerto Rico.
No.
And that's in Puerto Rico, but
Congratulations.
Yes, just one. There's so many abortion
It starts
clinics.
with one?
It does start with
It's
one.
a good start.
Okay, that's
But there are groups out there, and Heartbeat International, that website, will have some locations as well. They're a global organization.
Okay, that's great.
Yes.
That's good. That's
Yeah,
great.
that's exactly what they're about. They definitely want to connect those that may find themselves in a little bit of a crisis pregnancy, an unplanned pregnancy, or might have some questions, and to connect them so that they can receive the help and healing too that they need.
Where do you see New Life Solutions in the next few years? What's your vision?
Yes, I would love to see us continue to grow, and not grow for our kingdom or because of New Life Solutions, but for His kingdom. I want to see more people have an opportunity to be impacted. So what that means specifically is maybe brick and mortar locations, like our pregnancy centers, our Women's Place Medical Clinic throughout the state and the nation, but also it could mean what I like to refer to as a center of excellence, like a training center of excellence, and to train those centers throughout the U.S. and globally that might not have, that might be struggling with processes, procedures, forming a board of directors, working with their board of directors, putting protocols in place so that they can consistently deliver a high degree of excellence and service to all of their clients that they meet. And the medical side too. Since we are fully medical, we add even that extra value between having a doctor on site, doing well women care, doing pre and postnatal care as well, and it just adds that other level of excellence. I would love to see that replicated. But again, not for our kingdom, for His honor, for His glory, and to really make that spiritual impact. Because from my perspective, New Life Solutions, I think of Jeremiah crying out for the balm of Gilead, and he's crying out for healing and restoration. That's what we provide through Him. All of our ministries at some level connect with people who are hurting and need healing and wholeness. And that's my prayer.
That's great. How can we help you
Oh, my
as CYC?
Oh my word.
CYC is broadcasted
Worldwide.
worldwide, so people are from all over Australia, South Africa, everywhere right now. Can you
That is
see
wonderful.
and hear you?
Well, first of all, it's just a privilege to be with you today. So thank you for that. How you can help us? Oh my, just pray. Just pray. You can even go to our website, which is newlifesolutions.org, see what we're about, and to see if it's anything that you could just be interested in and praying for.
Spread the word, maybe.
Spread
Tell someone in need about this center.
Exactly.
Find a way to serve and volunteer.
Yes.
That's right. We love our volunteers. We have quite a handful of volunteers that help throughout all of our ministries and support us internationally as well. They support us each month as well, and just any way you feel led. And in your own sphere of influence, in your own community, in your own country, get involved and speak up and speak out and find a group like ours and come alongside them. And I know they would appreciate that very much as well.
Wow, this has been a great topic, great discussion.
I've learned so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been a
touched.
privilege.
It really touched us.
Wonderful
Touched
thing.
me.
We do
It
appreciate
is very
you
touchy.
coming, taking the time to be with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're
It's been a privilege.
accommodating and very flexible.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm thankful for the opportunity.
Great speaker as well.
Oh,
amazing,
awesome
outstanding, really. I think that these episodes are going to be a great success.
I think so
really
as well.
do.
I think they're going to reach
enjoyed
a lot of people,
thank
and
you.
Yeah.
that's really important to us.
Yeah, I
that's what
hope that our audience also get to enjoy these episodes. Make sure you like them and share them and spread the word. And tune in for another topic and another episode next week.
And do you have any final words, Mr. Charles DeMarco?
Oh, well, thank you again. And if there's anything we can do for you, that New Life Solutions can do for you all at CYC and the Grapevine, we're praying for you. We want to do that as well. We appreciate the partnership, so thank you.
Thank you so
very
much.
again.
Thank you, girls.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on
See
the
you soon.
Grapevine.
See you next week.
Bye.